Hey, it's Matt here. Today we're going to build a guest book, and specifically, we're going to rebuild my old guest book that I made probably 6 or 7 months ago pre-AI. And we're going to use Replit Agent. Now, if you don't have a guest book on your site, I'll show you what I got right now. Just a really simple app where anybody can come, enter their name, enter a message, and we store that, in a Postgres database, and then surface that on the site. Really simple. A lot of people do it on their blogs. It's a fun project. One thing that's a little more difficult, it requires persistent storage. It requires a full stack app because you have to call API endpoints to get those responses, to create those responses. So it can be a tricky project for people to stand up. And, given that my guest book is like 6 or 7 months old at this point, it's getting a little dated. I just don't have the time really to build something from scratch. But with tools like Agent, I found this is actually a perfect use case, right? Full stack app, database. We're going to build and deploy one right here. So I'm going to say, help me create a simple guest book for my blog where people can go and leave their name and a message. The interface should be clean, minimalist, and responsive. Um, I think this is honestly a good start. Let's also just say make sure the messages and timestamps are stored in a Postgres database. I'm going to start building. Again, keeping this one short and sweet. I think one thing that we talk a lot about, in some of my tutorials, I talk about going through a PRD, thinking through what you want. In this case, I already know exactly what I want. And that's why I'm starting with getting to an MVP. We're starting with a really simple prompt here. And so we're just going to vibe code this guest book. Let's see what agent comes up with for the plan. So, going to use chatcn. I do want a Postgres database. I think it should build that in. I'm not entirely sure why that was suggested. Again, with a V2, which is now in GA for everyone. That's new as of this week. We're going to stream in a preview of your application first before we start building it. So we should get a nice little guest book. Very cool. Sign the guest book, name, message. Submit button, I would assume. And then maybe we'll list some recent messages. This is kind of looking like what I'd expect. I think, like, off the bat, I probably want this to be a bit smaller, similar to the way that the log here is really the focus with the log emoji. And we don't really need that many. I also would like to display more messages. So maybe we display the messages in a grid, actually. One thing I did on my other guest book is that I restricted these messages to, say, a certain number of characters. So maybe it would be cool to enforce those character limits and then add more of a grid format. But that's like relatively simple to do with Tailwind and with front end stuff. So once Agent gets done with this plan, it's going to start working. It's going to start building stuff. You can see here, we're already writing the client and server. So we have sort of a blueprint that's going on there. Agent's building out the schema and some of the storage stuff. So we're going to let Agent rip. I'll come back once we have that first checkpoint. We'll take a look. Okay, so that was actually a really quick run. Looks like Postgres database was created on the plan. I saw that kind of come through. Design looks exactly like what it said it would. Let's try it out. Matt Palmer. Hi there. Give it a little wave. Thank you for signing the guest book. Your message has been added less than a minute ago. This is like, it's actually embarrassing how long I spent writing that old guest book, like pre-AI. It's actually unreal. So what I usually like to do is when I do this stuff, I do check to see if the database was implemented properly. It looks like in this case there are no tables, so we might have to give a little nudge to Agent. Because it says it's implementing a database. I don't see any tables in the database. So it's always good to check when you're building with AI. This is like principles that are developing with AI. It's your responsibility to check that stuff's properly implemented, right? Like AI can tell you things are implemented. Agent usually gets the database right. This is actually a bit of an exception. So simply mentioning that this thing didn't exist, Agent's probably going to correct that and make the change. But off the bat, now that we have Agent kind of working on transitioning from in-memory storage to our database, let's take a look at like the format. I think this is fine. I think I do want to use the old branding. So usually what I'll do, I'll start drafting up like a list of changes. Change the title to Matt's guestbook. Um, let's do a writing emoji. Matt's guestbook. All lowercase. Add all proper SEO and meta tags for the guestbook. Make the UI basically, let's say dark mode. Make the UI dark mode. We'll just call it dark mode. I think a dark theme sets it apart a little bit more. And then we want to display more messages and make the input smaller. There should be validation on the form to prevent long messages and names, as well as exclude special characters. Characters. Anytime that we're building an app where users submit data, you want to be really strict about what users can submit, right? And so one of the cool things about Agent with Postgres, we use an ORM. ORMs make sure that people don't like try SQL injection attacks on your database. But more than that, it's good to stop it at the form level and just like even on the front end, start saying, hey, you can't submit this much text, you can't submit these many characters. And so because agent runs typically take a little bit longer, like you can even see agent's going to loop through this to fix the Neon client and get us to the right spot. I do draft up like a list of changes that I want to make next. And I use the agent input box to do that. I might not even send all of this stuff, but I'm using it as kind of like a drafting area, right? So change the title, add SEO and meta tags. These are all things that like agent can one shot, make the UI kind of dark, display more messages, make the input smaller. We'll actually move this to another line item here. There should be input validation on the form to prevent long messages and names, as well as exclude special characters. Let's test it out now. We got our guest book. Matt, wave. Hey, what's up? Sign guest book. Boom. Let's check Postgres. See my data. Loading. Guestbook entries. There we go. Users. We don't really need a users table right now, but we have entries. So this is working. Guestbook looks good. To prevent long messages and names. Special characters aren't that concerning to me. We're gonna ship this one. So ideally, agent is gonna make these changes. What next? What do we want to change about this guestbook? I think everything looks good. What is the loading state? Kind of plain. We could do something like right, like add interactive animations to the guestbook loading state using Framer Motion. Framer Motion is just a cool library that's really good at like animating in different components. So it'll like make these like cards animate in a little bit nicer. So that could be pretty cool. Kind of like the direction we're going here with the black theme. Hopefully it corrects the white on the cards and the text. But again, we're kind of like looking at this in real time. Add interactive animations to the guestbook loading state using Framer Motion. Make sure that concurrent writes are handled properly. I'm thinking like if multiple people are submitting messages at the same time, poll for new messages at an appropriate interval so users see messages in real time. So what I'm thinking there is like if I'm looking at the guest book and you're looking at the guest book and I send a message, I want it to come through to you. It doesn't need to be quote unquote real time, but I'm thinking like a 5-second poll to that API would be nice. I'm also really digging how this is coming in, right? Like I like that styling. The other thing is that this will be hosted on my blog, right? So if we go to like my blog, there is right like we have some like it's very purple, which I like. what is the hex color code here? So I'm going to copy this color code. And then what I'm thinking is like, make the buttons, boom, make the buttons that color code. So it like kind of matches my blog in some sense. Uh, I'm digging how this is coming through. I think this is coming out really good. We have sort of our Postgres instance. We have our messages. Um, adding some like custom scroll bar style. So agent's really going to town here. I want to change this. So I'll add to the list sort of, right? Change tagline. I don't know what to, but we'll come up with it. But yeah, I think this is ticking all the boxes. This is a bit more of an advanced app, right? Where we're adding in some persistent storage, even though all that really was specifying a database. But now I'm thinking about, okay, for the user interactions, how do these messages update? Are we making sure that multiple updates don't break things? At the same time, if people are submitting messages very close to each other. And then the other things we'll do once we make these changes, is that we'll run through some like security checks. I actually liked that loading state a lot. Another thing that's kind of nice is that like we're updating the SEO meta tags. So if we click into index.html, what we should see here, there we go. So now we have like some nice meta details. And so what I did, I built the SEO tag analyzer, which like checks for these tags, right? And the cool thing is that because when you run a REPL, right, this is all running in my browser. The development URL, like if you built something locally, it would be localhost. The development URL here is actually live. So what I could do is check this to see the meta tags that I implemented in my development site, right, by pasting these in. So I can see my guest book, I can see a description saying that this should maybe be a little bit longer, or rather it's too long. It's not too long, it should be longer. And then we don't have any images, but that's okay. I'll probably use the image from my blog, so that's okay. But kind of cool way to check. I'll share this URL for this SEO tag analyzer as well. But if we go back to the guest book, we've done all of this stuff. So now we're gonna run on this. I'm gonna remove the tagline for now. These are kind of complicated, so we'll run that. And then we're gonna start looking at how this works under the hood. So while we're running that, because I'm a little impatient, I'm gonna open up the dev tools here. You can see, let's take a look, right? What we see is we're running these GET requests, and the GET request is fetching entries from the guest book. So if I go here to my server, again, I'm trying to understand how this works, and I look at my routes. We have this API guestbook route. So get guestbook entries with pagination, post get new guestbook entry, so create a new guestbook entry in the database. So we have this on the back end, and then what I would expect is on the front end, in our actual guest book, the message list, it's probably calling that endpoint somewhere. So let's see, API. Whoops. We'll just search here. API. Boop, boop, boop. What do we got? Query client. Export async. So in this query client file in the library, we have our API requests that are querying our client. So utils. I'm just kind of poking around to understand how the app works, right? Interesting. Pagination. I don't think I've found the exact point where in our app we're querying client just yet. We're importing home. We can open that up. Here we go. Guestbook query key. The cool thing, right? Because our front end's hitting the back end, and the back end's really only allowing the front end to access it. We're protecting that database from unauthorized queries, which is something I didn't even do in my original implementation, which is why by the time you watch this video, this will be deployed and replace my original implementation. It's important to think about these things, right? Like, number one, the concurrency stuff and like edge cases, but then two, the security considerations of having a database and letting people just like put stuff in it, right? And the fact that more than anything, when we look at things like this, if we go to this URL, and if it's a little zoomed out, we'll zoom in a bit more. And if I inspect this page, when I load the page, I can actually see all the requests that are coming through and what we're fetching, right? And so because I can see this, and because I can see this response where we're fetching data from the guest book, and because Like if I did Bob or something, I click sign guest book, I'm gonna get this guest book post request, right? Um, I have to do my homework and make sure that this web page is the only one that can make that guestbook post request, right? Because we don't want people coming in from an external data source trying to send in malicious information. Again, with the ORM, we get protection from that, but these are things to consider. So I like the purple here. I like the hover state. We should have a nice. Don't really have the animations could be better. That's okay. What I'm going to say now is analyze my project for security best practices in both form validation and API protection, and make sure only the form can write to the database. So we talked about security a lot. One of the things is you don't know what you don't know, right? And so it's very easy to deploy applications that you think, oh, this thing's secure, or you're not even really thinking about security, but you present sort of a vulnerability in the thing that you create. A really easy way to get around not knowing what you don't know is by just like literally asking AI. And so just asking agent, it's going to add a CSRF, cross-site something for request forgery token. Very simple way to prevent sort of a malicious attack where somebody impersonates your site to submit a form. And it's going to add these security headers. Also adding rate limits, which is nice, so people can't spam uh, the guestbook post endpoint. Again, this doesn't get a ton of traffic, but it's nice to know that we're adding these things in, just simple best practices in building web apps. So we're adding in CSRF protection, we're adding in rate limits, and applying this middleware to limit these. Now, one important piece about security, it's kind of like, if you go park your car in a bad part of town. Um, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I know all about that. Uh, but if somebody wants to break into your car, the very simple fact of the matter is that they're going to break into your car. You can do all this stuff to get around it. You can have a dash cam. You can hide your stuff. You can secure do whatever. If somebody wants to get in, they're going to get in. It's kind of the same thing with a website. Like, we're not trying to prevent against sophisticated web attacks, although Replit does protect against DDoS and some other stuff like that. So deploying on Replit is useful in that nature. But what we're trying to do is just like eliminate the 80 to 90% of easy security exploits that people like me, people with no skill, people with skill issues, know to look for and can access whatever they want to or do malicious things. So really, again, we're trying to secure things to a reasonable extent to reduce the risk as much as possible without spending weeks going into some kind of crazy security details. So, Liaison al Gaib. I think that's how you spell that. Maybe 2 I's. We'll do one more test here. Sign guest book. Thank you for signing the guest book. That's a nice little touch. I dig that. We got a little security config event firing off here. X-frame options. The guest book is post. That's kind of cool. I dig it. So we're getting some sort of token and timestamp and a signature from the server. That's this is my assumption that we're then securing that guestbook request with. I love that the suggested feature is an inspirational quote of the day display. We added a strict server-side input validation to prevent XSS and injection attacks. Cool. Implemented API key auth for form submissions to prevent unauthorized writes. Added rate limiting. 100 requests per 15 minutes. Implemented security headers. Actually, this looks good. Added nonce-based protection. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. This all looks really great. This is about 1,000 times better than my old guestbook. I'm going to deploy this, hit it up with a little custom URL, guestbook.mattpalmer.io. Also support palmer.gg because, I like buying domains, and get it deployed. So just like that, I kind of had this, let's go to the other one. I had this dated, basically, guestbook app, rebuilt it in, 10 minutes, and we're going to deploy it just like that, brought it into I would say 20%. It brought it into 2025 because things move really fast. So this is how you can vibe code a guestbook app for your website. Really simple. Add security best practices on Replit. And then, right, deployment is as simple as going to the deploy tab, deployments, auto scale, set up your deployment, approve, boom, deployed. But again, I'm Matt with Replit. This is my new guestbook, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.